I think most people think of Six Flags America as a park where you go for the steel coasters. I mean, Batwing is legendary, Superman Ride of Steel, legendary, Joker's Jinx, also kind of legendary, Firebird, not as legendary. But really, I feel that people need to pay attention to what the Wooden Coast collection also is, because they got two phenomenal little woodies, or not even the little, decent sized woodies, that both were kind of highlights of our recent visit. We got Roar and the Wild One.
Roar was great. I've always loved that ride because it's like one of my first wooden coasters, Roar, at Six Flags Marine World, was based on this Roar. It has a slightly different beginning and end, and it ran PTCs, but still a great layout and essentially the same layout. And then the Wild One is a very interesting little ride. Did you know it's actually technically the oldest operating roller coaster in the country right now, since Leap the Dips is closed? And I guess there's a little debate on the Wild One, because the Wild One technically dates back to 1917, when it was built for Paragon Park in Hull, Massachusetts. But the ride changed a lot. It partially burned down in 1932. It was designed by John Miller in the Philadelphia Tobacco Company, and then it was damaged by one of several fires, because it also had fire damage in the 60s. But in 1932, it was damaged severely by fire, and then Herbert Schmeck came in and reprofiled and redesigned the ride, and a lot of the ride changed. Like, it used to be a double out and back coaster, and then they made it just like a single out and back. They changed the shape of the drops. I mean, they changed everything about it. So for some coaster purists, the ride that we have at Six Flags America really dates back to 1932. But technically speaking, and as far as the park is concerned, it's the oldest operating roller coaster in the world. And it has a great funky little layout. The helix at the end, I think, is a nice touch. That was actually added in 1986 when the roller coaster moved from Paragon Park to Six Flags America, when it reopened in the park as Wild World Wild One.
Anyway, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Sean.
It's Alex.
You're listening to another episode of
Coaster Kings Radio.
This visit's all about the last trip to Six Flags America we will ever take.
Yeah.
99.9% sure that's the case, because the park appears to be closing September 1st now.
We just found out a couple hours ago that it looks like they may not be doing their Halloween event this year.
Which, I mean, that kind of makes sense, but why put all that effort into structures for mazes and stuff if it's the last thing you do? But either way, we just went to Six Flags America. We're actually in the area for something completely different, work related. We needed to get some visa stuff done in Washington, D.C. And so we're like, well, this is the greatest time, because honestly, our summer has been packed full. And then we had some diplomatic stuff come up, and we kind of had to take a couple days off to deal with that. And that was a perfect excuse for a little domestic North America road trip, which we haven't done one pretty much in a minute, because we usually just end up taking all of our longer windows of time off and like flying overseas and getting parks done. But this was kind of a refreshing thing, because we have been talking about, like, well, we have to ride Big Bad Wolf in the area, we have to ride Reptera, we want to go to Six Flags America still. And so we ended up doing a little 4-park road trip that started off with Six Flags America. And it was bittersweet to be back.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest way to say it, because we actually had a ball. We had a great little time. And even though we kind of came for Firebird and Batwing, because we had not done Firebird in its current shape, or whatever you want to call it, the Florida's conversion, and Batwing was by far our favorite coaster at the park. So we're like, okay, we're excited to ride that again, and we want to get on Firebird. Unfortunately, due to weather, Firebird never reopened because of a big rainstorm that rolled in. It was 3 hours before the park closed.
It had a mechanical issue, too.
Yeah, and then the rainstorm rolled in, and even though they cycled it in the rain, actually the park closed early.
Yeah.
Which I guess is just a symptom of a dying park. And then Batwing, I think we all know that Batwing had a lift issue at the beginning of the season, and then the front nose, the fiberglass piece, like flew off and dangled on a ride cycle when it last ran a couple weeks ago. And we kind of knew that wasn't going to be open.
Yeah.
So that was not really a surprise, but we were kind of hopeful, like maybe, maybe what? Like, it's not gonna happen.
I think Firehawk has, or not Batwing. Sorry, excuse me. I think Batwing has probably already given its last rides. Especially if this rumor about the Halloween event being canceled is true.
Yeah, we're recording this as the news comes out, so by the time you heard this, it's actually probably like a day or two later. If it's wrong, it's wrong.
Yeah, we just looked at our phones, and people are starting to realize that the park doesn't have any hours listed starting in September. And some of the other parks are that way too, but then some parks do have their hours listed. So I guess this might actually really be more speculation.
Who knows?
But it's also just seems very believable that they wouldn't have their Halloween event this year because the park is closing. But yeah, so we went, and we really only had a few hours to work with, especially since we were shooting the gap with weather. So we had a good like two and a half, 3 hours of like solid ride time. We were looking at the app to see, what was running, what wasn't running. Joker's Jinx and Roar didn't open until after we were already at the park, which is around 2:30. Even though Firebird was a priority, because we only rode it with the stand-up trains as Apocalypse when we went in 2018. And I was like, oh, it'll be fun to ride it as a roller coaster. And famous last words, because that ended up not happening. We went and we decided to ride Roar first
because you saw it open.
Yeah, it was open. And we were like,
there was no line.
We did the flash pass. We got our flash pass for Joker's Jinx because we knew that would be a really long line.
So I'm got a Diamond Elite VIP Legacy Deluxe holder thingy,
Princess.
And that means that I now get 4 free individual ride flash passes per trip, per visit to a park, which is great because you book them on your phone. And because it's just my pass, I can really only book one at a time. But once you are active to ride, it is good for 2 hours. So what I do is I can just book a second one that starts 6 to 7 minutes later, which I guess then used for Alex. And because you have 2 active reservations, really the only difference is one expires 7 minutes before the other, which you don't need that much time. So we usually just use them in a way that we just roll up and we scan both barcodes, we both get on. So Alex doesn't have the super deluxe crazy old Diamond Elite VIP pass, but I do. And that kind of works that way. Yeah. So we used 2 of them we booked 2 of them for Joker Jinx, but then just hopped on Roar.
Yeah, we hopped on Roar in the meantime. And while we were in line for Roar, we saw, obviously it's right next to Firebird, and it was running. It had a line, but we were like, okay, we'll do Roar and then probably Firebird on the way to Joker's Jinx. But then by the time we finished Roar, Firebird was sending empty trains. And so we were like, okay, Firebird is down.
And the line for Firebird was actually decently long because there was only, everything at the park was on one train. If that, one vehicle, no matter what kind of ride you were. So we decided, okay, then we'll come back because the line was kind of long, just cycling empties. And then I did see a couple trains dispatched people while we're over at Joker's Jinx. But after that, I don't think it.
Yeah, and it went down again. It was like big down. They dumped. By the time we were done with Gotham City, they had dumped the queue, and they were like, okay, well, whatever.
Which I still think it's funny that area of the park, by the way, is called Gotham City, given that it's every franchise in the DC lexicon there. And
the writing Batman ride is the lack of interest that was expressed in turning this area into DC Universe, like all of the other Six Flags parks, even though this area of the park is exactly what makes a DC Universe what it is, which is like a bunch of DC intellectual properties that aren't necessarily related to each other or taking place in the same universe, but it's all DC, so it's the DC Universe. But yeah, so we rode Roar, and I'm really, really glad. That was a high priority for me. Getting last rides on the wooden coasters, because
there's no way to ever get
the wooden coasters are least likely to be salvaged. In fact, I don't think there's a good chance of any of these major coasters.
And I want to be honest, I think Roar ran pretty well.
It was good.
I mean, of course, like Alex and I both have quite a history with the one in California that was turned to the Joker, which was back then kind of an unlikely suspect to be turned to Joker.
It was the first time a GCI had been converted.
Like a pretty modern, well-running Woody was converted into an RMC. And so it was fun to ride the original layout. To an extent, the layout's slightly different. There's a couple of moments there that are designed.
And we love PTCs, so it was fun riding. It was like, this is the last GCI that ran PTCs. Because by 1999, they were all running Millennium Flyers. In fact, Roar in Discovery Kingdom was the very first roller coaster to run Millennium Flyers.
The OG.
So, yeah, it was that 1 year difference between the two Roars. 1998 Roar still had PTCs, and 99 Roar got the new ones.
This is super random, but there's a picture on RCDB from like years ago. I think maybe Joel Rogers may have taken it from the Coast Gallery, but it was like a overall shot of Roar at Circus America and its layout. And I had it as my background on my very first laptop when I was a teenager in high school in the Netherlands. I had it as my background for like years.
I always felt like the layout felt like it was designed for Discovery Kingdom, even though it wasn't, because like the way the first drop and the second drop were so beautifully framed as you walked up the entrance of the park. Whereas with Six Flags America, it's like you come to the ride on the backside, the station side, and you don't get to appreciate the ride's first two drops.
But then there's all those hills in the background.
But it's still a great looking ride. It just always made me feel like walking up to, like when we went in 2018, I felt like, oh, Roar's backwards. Like we're walking up behind it and we can't go to the front.
Weird memory, but the ride was just covered in these giant, like, what are the bugs called? They're all over Maryland. And
spotted lanternfly.
And they're big and they're like, they kind of, when they spread their wings, they're red, but otherwise they look kind of grayish.
Yeah.
And the whole ride plot was just covered in, like, we were going through and they were just flying everywhere. I was like, oh my God, it was buggy as hell.
But
anyway.
But a great ride.
So next we rode Joker's Jinx, and Joker's Jinx is running like it's never gonna reopen. Like it's very clear to me that like they are the last bit of gas.
He is limping along. They are not maintaining.
So depending on the cycle, they were keeping 2 to 3 cars empty because otherwise the train was too heavy, I guess, and they would launch it, and like the launch was so weak, and we rode, of course, Flight of Fear right after it, and it was very clear to me how different how they run.
Day. Mm-hmm.
And even though I love Joker's Jinx and another one, I don't know what it was with Circus America. But as a kid, I've got a bunch of relations to this park. Like I was telling Alex once, I did like a big a project at elementary school. We had to pick a topic and we had to make like a poster out of it. Where we put like a bunch of, it was like a piece of art we had to make, and then we picked roller coasters, and then every bit that wasn't track, we had to like take it out. So like it was like an art thing. It was only track, and it was like a big poster. And we printed off like so many roller coasters, but we printed off like a bunch of Joker's Jinx angles, and we put them all on there because it looked like the big mess of track. I mean, so cool.
America was the American Wallaby Holland.
Yeah, so like it was.
I mean, they even used Joker's Jinx as B-roll footage to like advertise Superman the Ride at Wallaby Holland. So
actually, I think they used Poltergeist, because they used yellow track, and I was like, this thing is red. And then they also used Superman from New England for Goliath. So anyway, so yeah, that was another one of those coasters where, like, as a kid, I was a big fan of. Yeah.
Joker's Jinx was important to me because that ride, I feel like, really represents that. For me, Joker's Jinx is like peak Premier Parks era over speculation and expansion for this park. And even though like Poltergeist will live on comfortably, it is the better ride of the two Premier Parks era spaghetti bowl from Premier rides. It was still great to ride Joker's Jinx again one more time. And it's such a funny experience because of the way it crawls through. Like you go through the first 3 inversions all right, but when you're like kind of screwing around up at inversion height, and then you go through the little ring tunnel where the mid-course break would be on the Flight of Fear coasters. I mean, we are just like inching along. And then you slowly gain momentum some more as you like spiral your way down and end up with like a pretty nice little corkscrew finale by the end. But yeah, it was a relief to ride that one again, because that one I just remember being fascinated with in my childhood. I feel like it's just peak 90s legacy experience.
And it's nice because the way the spaghetti bowl is situated inside the park, you actually walk around almost the majority of it.
And we took lots of pictures.
So it's kind of fun. It's fun to sit there. And again, it was really weird feeling the launch being so weak and thinking it would valley a couple times.
Yeah.
And having trains go out with only 16 passengers, which also made the line very long. So we used our fast pass on that. And
we walked up, it was like, oh, that line doesn't look that long. But we had used our fast pass thing anyway. And then we realized it was running at most 16 passengers per dispatch.
And only running one train, of course. And the queue outside was like the entire length of the building. And then inside it was almost the whole length. So it was actually quite the queue.
Really grateful for that. And
I think it said it was 40
the
minutes.
Videos and stuff that we got. I don't think that coaster is going anywhere. It's going to be.
I think it's going to be a parts donor.
They're going to ship it in pieces to Fiesta Texas and Kings Dominion and Kings Island.
Yeah, that's I think will happen.
There is no chance for that ride. Not a chance.
I think we're gonna do like a full episode on both Great America and Circus America closing, and kind of discuss in more detail where we think everything's going, what's happening to the asset, what's happening to the parks.
Yeah.
Because I don't think we have time for that in this episode, and I don't want to make this episode too long. I just kind of want to talk about our visit to the park. But yeah, we're going to drop some hints here or there what we think will or will not happen.
Yeah.
So then we rode Superman next, which just received these brand new trains from Intamin, and they are beautiful. They are new. They no longer have the weird shape to them as far as the restraints go. They just have the classic T-bar restraints, except for they have some shin guards on them,
side brackets.
But then my downside is they kind of feel a little bit like the trains, like it was maybe like a tiny bit smaller than the trains on Millennium Force. So there's there's a handlebar in the front of each car that is really low, like knee level, if not below knee level. And for a tall guy like baloney. For a tall guy like myself, it doesn't. I just barely fit in it. I really had to squish in there, and like my legs were against.
They were assigning rows, and it was kind of painful. Okay, we'll sit wherever.
And I didn't think it'd be.
But we should have sat in an even numbered row.
Yeah,
we still had a great ride though.
Yeah, I will say, even though my knees were jammed against the metal, I actually really enjoyed the ride. I thought it was one of my favorite rides of the day because it's kind of one of those things where, like, yeah, I don't know what they were thinking when they designed this ride for Darien Lake, and of course they plopped the ride into Circus America as well. But the ride layout is so weird. And of course, I don't have to tell any of you guys that this layout is super weird. But for those that aren't super familiar with this coaster, is that you have a 200+ foot drop. How tall is the drop? Like
200 feet, yeah.
Foot drop. And then you have a turn, which is really cool and fast. And they have a really big airtime hill that's kind of floaty. It's not super intense. And then you go into one giant helix, like a giant damn helix. So you think, like, why? Why is this here? Like a giant helix. It's a 1.5 helix. And they have a long straightaway, one really sharp airtime hill, into another really long helix, and then 3 small hops into the brake run. It makes absolutely no sense. But it's, in a way, so fun and cool because it's so unique. Like, who goes through this helix at, like, this, 60 miles per hour, super fast, through this giant field, and then you do it twice.
When they were designing this for Darien Lake, it felt like this was Intamin's first hypercoaster. It was their first coaster. It was one of the first coasters that Intamin actually manufactured the track for with their own design, because this would be the kind of their first step away from Giovanola and their manufacturing system, because in the mid-90s they were still working with Giovanola for things like Shockwave at Drayton Manor. And then with the inverted impulse coasters, with Linear Gale and with Volcano, they started using their new, like, kind of triangular mesh track system that was their own. And Darien Lake's Superman was one of the first rides. And you could tell they were just like figuring out what worked. It was like, this was a design firm in their infancy in a way, because even though they'd been designing rides for a long time, they'd never designed anything like this before. And there's like the straightaways and stuff. There was just something about it that seemed very innocent.
Because of the track they used, it reminded me a lot kind of a cop car chase. Yeah. Because it was like an early Intamin too, where the track was the non-triangular, like regular track.
Yeah, that was a transitional phase too.
Yeah.
I can't, I need to look up. I think Giovanola did do the track for that, but I can't remember. It was really those, because like Giovanola did the track for Indiana Jones and the Temple of Peril, because that was still predated Intamin's, but Intamin did have their train design. They had those ride vehicles would be their standard California Screamin' and like the first like 8 inversion looper and stuff. Those would have those cop car chase trains. But yeah,
overall, I think we enjoyed riding it a lot. Yeah. I don't think this ride is going anywhere either. It's just one of those rides where it's like, first of all, it uses about 3,000 freaking supports just for the helices.
It's huge.
Because the helices are massive, but they're only on that singular track. It doesn't do a whole
lot. And yeah, it would be a very expensive ride to relocate. To say nothing of the fact that like that one of the big straightaways was really designed for Darien Lake, because you're like skimming the water, and like it was already a weird choice for Six Flags America, because America didn't have that, and they didn't give the ride like an extra airtime hill or anything. It's just a straightaway through nothing. The ride just goes really fast. I mean, it's really odd.
It's going through nature though.
It's something that you can appreciate. It's something I appreciate more now. Also, like when it opened, it was just like when Darien Lake opened theirs, it was a huge deal. And then when Six Flags America opened theirs, it was completely overshadowed, not only just by the fact that it was a clone, of a coaster that was in a better setting, but also completely overshadowed by the Superman at Six Flags New England and by Millennium Force. So like this ride has never really gotten the attention that it might have gotten if it had opened maybe a year earlier, or if it had opened on a year that wasn't the same year as Millennium Force and Superman at Six Flags New England.
But I will say, this is one of those rides, and I actually just posted on Facebook a few days ago, and on Instagram too, a couple photos of Magic Mountain's Goliath. It was like, you know what, Goliath, I don't, don't hate on this ride. Like, hating on this is kind of lame, because
that opened the same year too.
Because that generation of hypercoasters is like so experimental, and you have such weird hypercoasters. You've got the Titan and Goliath kind of situation. You got the Ride of Steels from Darien Lake and South America.
A choice.
And so all of them are so different that now we're talking 25 years later. We got to appreciate how
Steel Dragon 2000.
Yeah, we got to appreciate that it's so different, because now you can ride all these B&M hybrids that all kind of feel the same everywhere.
Yeah.
All the Morgan hybrids kind of run at the same. So like, I appreciate rides that are really freaking different. Don't do the stereotypical stuff. So I really enjoyed the ride. Also, guys, America's Superman, more than I thought I would.
Yeah.
Also, I'm like at the height ceiling, so for me it's kind of like, I don't even get on. Like, I don't even get excited until after I get off the ride. Usually,
we're just glad that we dispatched Sean's height.
Also, the restraints are kind of tight on tall people. Yeah.
How tough the restraints were on the odd numbered rows.
So yeah, then we didn't really ride anything else in the area.
We paid our respects to Batwing, which you get a great view of from the exit of Superman.
Yeah. So Batwing, yeah, like we mentioned earlier, closed about 2 weeks prior to our visit, and there's no signs of reopening it. I don't expect them to even put the money or effort into reopening it. I think it's just done, and it's fine. Like, we knew the death was coming. Yeah, it's the last remaining Flying Dutchman.
It's gonna be rolling stock from a handful of their coasters will be intact. And then, like,
it'll be an absolute miracle if it actually gets relocated, which I doubt will be the happen.
Yeah, I just don't think so. But who knows? Crazier things have happened. So by this point, we continued our way down. At this point we were like, okay, Firebird, and it was down. We walked over, big down. Queue was dumped. We were like, all right, whatever. And then we rode Wild One. By this point, it was like we had Wild One, we had Professor. What is it? Professor Screamore's Skywinder. We had Professor Screamore's Skywinder.
A funny story.
Which was a high priority for us, too, because we love SLCs.
Especially with the new trains.
This is an OG SLC. This is like a first edition, 1995. But we were like, all right, well, let's do Wild One, get that done. And then if Firebird still isn't open, we'll go to Professor Screamore. And then by that point, we're like, okay, well, then we'll just wait it out for Firebird.
Anyway, so we did Wild One, which it was better than I remember.
It was better than
it was running pretty well. It was actually very wild. The layout makes absolutely no sense.
The layout keeps you guessing.
It's super wonky, like just the way that the thing is shaped and the shape of the hills. I mean, absolutely weird, but in the best way possible, because it makes for a very unique ride. And I always make sure that if there's a 3-bench PTC train, which is the case on Wild One, I always want to ride in the middle car, because no matter how bad the ride is, generally speaking, if you're in the middle of a car on a 3-bench PTC train, you're gonna have a great ride. You're not gonna be dying of pain. It's just the back and the fronts of the cars like absorb all the shock, so you'll shake around a little bit, but it's kind of smooth. Like
I loved it. I felt like what was great about the ride rang true. It was easy to love, easy to appreciate the ride's quirks and nuances. Of all the rides that are probably not going to survive the closure of this park, the Wild One for me will be the saddest, because not just because it's historic and old, but because it does have a great, unique layout. It represents a bygone era of roller coaster design. The fingerprints of legends are on this ride. And so as delightful as it was to ride it again, everything that we enjoyed at this park also made us sad. Like we rode 5 rides. We rode these 5 rides once each. And every ride felt like it carried so much like weight to it. Not like enjoying it for what it is, but then also thinking about what it means to enjoy these all for probably the last time. There were other rides in the park too that seemed like they were limping to the finish line. Their Intamin 2nd Gen Freefall, which is one of the very first ones ever built. It opened in like 96, 95. It it was called Drop of Doom, and then it became Voodoo Drop when they rethemed that area of the Wild West area, and they turned it into Mardi Gras. That ride has 3 gondolas. It was one of the smallest ones ever built.
Yeah, it's so small. You think it's like a
It's a very short tower, and it's also pretty low capacity.
Is it the same height as the one at Carowinds? Also super tiny.
No, this one is the smallest one ever. Yeah. I don't think there was ever a shorter one built than this one. It's like comically short. But at the time, it was cool. It was a prototype. This was like Premier Parks era. So it was, they were just doing interesting stuff. This was right after they built the SLC, which was like pretty exciting at the time in 1995. But yeah, the Voodoo Drop was down to 1 gondola. So it was dispatching 4 people at a time.
I will say it wasn't very busy. It wasn't like busy. Issue.
There were several rides, like not just coasters, not just the usual suspects, but even flat rides running at limited capacity, which is unusual. Their Intamin Flying Dutchman has half of the boats taken off. They took a video of it because it looks almost, at first I thought it was like a smaller version of the ride, because the first thing you notice is that it's missing so many boats. Then I realized it's the same as all the others. It's just missing half of the boats that are kind of on the inside of the ring that spin out as far. I'm pretty sure that ride's going to be a parts donor. There's other installations of this ride in the company.
Quite a few, actually. And then with the one at Great America closing, I'm sure between the 2 of them, they can keep a lot of them still alive. But didn't they announce the one closing at Carowinds too?
The little ship ride? Or the tower ride?
The tower.
Oh, yeah. No, the tower, the Intamin Giant Drop, that's going to be a parts donor for whichever ones are remaining. But yeah, Carowinds is closing.
Great America's closing. This one's closing. So the only one left is going to be the Six Flags Great America one.
Yeah.
And
California's Great America's one is closing?
The whole park is closing.
Well, I know the whole park is closing. I thought you meant like they announced that it's closing.
Oh, no, I'm talking about the whole park.
Yeah. I mean, there's others. I mean, they're disappearing. Obviously, like Six Flags St. Louis chopped theirs. Canada's Wonderland still has theirs. It's still going strong. But yeah, a lot of these first generation Intamin second gen drop towers are starting to go down, and it's kind of, to me, it seems a bit like a crapshoot of like which ones are going to stay and which ones are going to go, since there's a handful at each of these, each sides of the chain. But yeah, that ride's not going anywhere. A lot of rides, I didn't realize until we started planning for this trip that a lot of rides that I thought were still at Six Flags America were already gone. The Larson Loop is gone. I mean, most of the Larson Loops are gone now. Those only stuck around for a decade or so, which, no complaints here. They had a Chance Falling Star that was next to the Larson Loop. Those 2 rides and the Voodoo Drop made up this little like plaza of flat rides for the Mardi Gras area, and now just the drop tower is left. There was a couple other vacant spots where flat rides had been. They filled one with the Nebulas for the Steamworks.
Yeah, it's funny. I feel like in general, though, the flat ride selection isn't terrible, because you've also got the flat ride, the Harley Quinn, Spinsanity one.
Yeah.
And I think it was an appropriate amount of flat rides for the business of the park.
Totally. It was just that there were some places where you could see where a flat ride had been, and that it, obviously was gone. And there were areas of the park that felt like you could tell that a ride used to be there, and that's why there's even Midway there, and then it's all gone. So it's like symptomatic of what's happening here.
Folks thought the park layout on that topic didn't really make a lot of sense, because the park is so disjointed in its approach. I mean, of course, it was built in a certain way, and then it gets kind of added on in these really, really weird ways, especially the way they situated Batwing and Superman. I don't know what they were thinking. They weren't, but
they were just putting the rides where they would fit.
Yeah, it was just like Tetris.
Batwing, like by the time they were building Batwing, they knew that the capacity would be an issue. So they were like, well, if we put it really far away, enough people won't find the ride, and then the capacity won't be an issue.
Who's going to build a ride for it to not to be found? Come on. I don't think that's realistically a reason.
And they built it where they did, and the real ones would know.
The real ones.
If you know the ride.
All right.
I mean, that's why they put Deja Vu in the back corner of Magic Mountain, because they were like, well, nobody can find Cyclone. Nobody comes and rides Cyclone. So if we're building this coaster that's low capacity with one train, if we put it in the back, it'll mitigate the issue. It didn't work. the ride was still a problem. But
I don't think that was the reason.
No, I'm serious. This is the logic.
Put it there.
You gotta return to the brain set of Premier Parks.
They put it there because they wanted more traffic to Cyclone, so they put a big marketable attraction over there, so they could have Cyclone's overflow.
But then they knew, like, well, worst case scenario, like, at least the new coaster won't have long lines because nobody will find it. Nobody will come back here.
Anyway, so to kind of talk about Batwing a little bit, I am sad about that. Because it was really my favorite coaster there, and I do think the B&M Superman clones, for example, are not even as good as the Vekoma Flying Dutchman. So now being down to 0, pretty much.
Yeah,
I don't expect it to be relocated. I expect it to just be the end of it.
Yeah,
unless they kept all the Firehawk pieces and whatever, not the pieces, but like the trains, and somehow decided that they could Frankenstein this coaster in another park, but I highly doubt it.
Not a chance.
But if we do see this at Michigan's Adventure, I'll be the first in line.
Could you imagine?
So anyway, so that's a wild one. We went over to Professor Screamore's Skywinder, which is quite the name, for this steampunk-themed relaunch of the SLC. And we hadn't realized that previously it also ran 8-car vehicles. So we thought, oh my God, they have a shorter train on it now, an 8-car Vekoma Freedom Flyer SLC trains. But really, they were 8 for a long time.
We had thought that the only SLCs that ran 8 cars, we thought, were the first two. Because like Condor went down to 8 for some sort of operational.
No, it had to do with the stress fractures. So there was actually a report from one of the U.S. parks that were part of Premier Parks, may very well have been this installation, where there was an issue. It had to shorten the trains because of stress fractures. So then they redid the trains, and then I shorted them as well in Walibi Holland. And I remember that because that was a whole TV show.
It may have been T2 though, also because
it could have been that,
because T2 went down to 7 cars. That one really, and T2 had the same weird kind of shaping.
Well, T2 is the same as Condor, the layout, and then this one was the first of the full second.
Yeah, this was like number 3 or number 4. I know Great Nor'easter was really early too, but that one had its own little quirks with like how the station was situated. But this was the first, I think, of like the standard SLCs. It was very early in the timeline for SLCs. And for whatever reason, it had an 8-car train for quite some time.
So anyway, so we actually only realized that upon inspection of the new trains.
We've already ridden it. We already had the credit.
Yeah, we had the credit.
And it just hadn't occurred to me.
Yeah. They did a phenomenal job with the repaint on it. It's golden tracks, like a dark red supports. They have both red and orange new Freedom Flyer trains from Vekoma. And so the whole setup is beautiful. They did a phenomenal job with the relaunch of the ride. So I don't expect this coaster to be relocated necessarily because, come on, like it's kind of getting old. But I do expect the train to get repurposed. So maybe I kind of expect them to go to Kong.
Yeah, that seems like the obvious.
Because that's one of the last SLCs left without those trains on them, or maybe to Edna or La Tuck. But either way. When we rode, though, I will say it did not run as well as, for example, Riddler at Circus New England or almost any of the other SLCs that run these trains. I did think there was quite a roughness to it still. I kind of enjoyed it, but it was like I didn't know where to hold on.
We had a good ride. It was an enjoyable ride, but like I lost an earring. Like it was rambunctious. It was
rambunctious.
It was violent. It was intense. It was. It wasn't. The trains made the ride pleasant enough, but like the way that the ride was running was not endemic of a ride that like is particularly well maintained. And like it's 30 years old. SLCs are tanks. The boomerangs are tanks. You know, these rides last forever. But does it have enough mileage on it to justify the cost of relocation, reassembly before, because you go through the trouble of that, and that's kind of the issue with a lot of the rides here. It's like, do these rides have enough years on them if Six Flags America was staying open? Sure. Do they have enough years on them to justify the expense of disassembly, relocation, reassembly? No, because if you're going to do that, you need a ride that's going to last longer than like 5 or 10 years. And this SLC, there's just no way that relocating it or selling it or anything would be justified.
Another thing I want to say about this ride is that we had a funny story because we went over there and the clouds were kind of getting gray around and the line was kind of long. So we said, you know what, screw it. Let's just get we had 2 more fast passes left and we didn't have, or flash passes, didn't have much else we had to ride at this point. That was open anyway. That was the last
Yeah, because then we were
open.
going to wait out Firebird. It's so close.
So we get the little flash passes, and one is, of course, like a few minutes behind the other because of the way that you have to book them. And so we show up at the gate there. The guy's like, "Oh, you have flash pass?" I'm like, "Oh, well, you know, one still needs a minute and a half."
We were kind of waiting around, and the ride operator was like making eye contact and was like, "Are you flash pass?"
And then he said, "Oh, you know what? Doesn't matter.
Yeah,
minute and a half.
get on.
Just right now." So he's like, "Any row." So we picked the front row because you know the front row.
They'd already started opening the air gates, and then they slammed them shut on.
And everyone was like, "What's going on?" And so then we sit in the front row, right? And there was these people that were about to board in the front row, and they were like complaining, like, "Oh my god, you know, the people get the ride. We were waiting, blah blah." And I'm feeling kind of bad, but I'm also like, "Well, I do have a flash pass."
We're just taking the cues from the staff, like.
So we're sitting down, and so we dispatch, and the clouds are really really dark all around. Yeah. And so we get back to the station, and we get off, and they're like, "The ride's closed for inclement weather." You know, and all these alarms are going off, and you know, there's like these
wide PAs. They're like, seek shelter.
They're like seek shelter, like in, you know, like heavy winds and like whatever, like, you know, lightning and thunder. Like it was a pretty damning announcement. So we're like, all right, let's get out. But then I guess the ride never reopens. I feel really bad. These people were about to board, and then we boarded instead.
And then we boarded and got the last ride of the day, and no rides ever reopened after. No rides ever reopened after that. It
was like 5 p.m.
Yeah,
and the park's supposed to go.
Stuck it out for a couple hours,
and then we were in the rain.
By 7 o'clock, staff was walking around telling people that they called it on the park, which, you know, is understandable. The park was only scheduled to be open.
I guess I could have seen that coming because there's a lot of staff and people leaving the park.
Yeah.
And we're like, what's going on? Because we're just standing somewhere in the park, just like waiting out the rain.
Are they food? Like, are they rides?
And sure enough, when this maintenance guy who was closing down War and Firebird and whatnot, he was like parking the boat for the shoot.
Yeah.
He's like, I don't know if anyone told you guys, but like the park's closed.
It was like 5 after 7. He's like, park's closed. And we're like, okay, that's fine.
So then we left. And of course, we get to like the area at the front of the park, and even all the restaurants and shops. Like, it was already
everything is.
We're like, oh,
shutter,
closed.
Closed.
Like they closed a while before we realized that they closed. And so then we left, and that was that. So we didn't get our Firebird because of that, but that's okay. I mean, it's Firebird. We did ride it as Apocalypse.
I'm just glad we got it as Apocalypse.
Yeah,
because that was the OG stand up for B&M. It was the OG B&M period, and those trains, they're gonna go somewhere.
So overall, we do want to say the park was in pretty decent shape. It doesn't feel like a park that's going to close this year, which is what's so weird about it.
That's what's so sad about it.
Yeah, like
such a nice time.
And there were still there's like little restaurants that they've been building. I don't know when they called a shot on this, but I feel like they put actually quite a bit of money in there. So first of all, they did the whole steampunk area. So they had a stunt show for it, a new Nebulous ride. They redid all the restaurants for it. The Raptors ride got a whole new theme. And then they did the Skywinder project where they got new trains for it, retheme, all that. Superman got 2 super deluxe new expensive trains. They did a lot of work on this park. They got Wild One back up and running.
Wild One had been closed for weeks before our trip.
So I feel like they did a lot of work in it, and the landscape was in good shape. I felt like you could even sense some of the Cedar Fairiness to it. There was just like some changes that were made and some of the marketing stuff around the park. You could really tell, okay, like, you know, Cedar Fair definitely, or the Cedar Flag as I call it, the post-merger, that management team definitely made some touches and some improvements to the park already. So I feel like the shot wasn't called that early. I think that they really called the shot and then like immediately announced it to the public. Because there's too much recent stuff, too many recent investments into this whole project to now shutter it. It didn't feel like, it felt like, wow, they're actually putting money into this place, and now they're
I feel like when things like new trains and stuff are being added to the rides, they still, like, the decision had not been made. It was, I think, like what Sean said, it was not only was the decision a surprise to us, but it was very sudden. I'm sure it was a surprise to a lot of people. It was like no sooner did they decide that they needed to close the park, did they announce it. Maybe it just happened over a single phone call or something. Because it's not like there was clues that the park was closing. Not when you're spending that kind of money on ride enhancements. Like paint jobs painting Skywinder, and, you know, new trains are one thing, but like it's not cheap to paint a coaster. that decision was not made.
I mean, that whole relaunch of the whole area, putting a bunch of animatronics on the repertoire, like all that stuff.
They have little animatronic dinosaurs.
Those are long haul investments. Same with these trains for Superman. If you knew you were going to close this coaster, you would have just ran the old trains for one more season. Why are we investing in $1 million trains?
So there was definitely a plan to keep the park open until there wasn't, and then
here we are.
And then the axe fell.
Yeah,
very short notice, very suddenly. It's very sad. Apparently, so the city of Bowie, I think, is the city that it's technically in. It's either Bowie or
Marlboro,
Upper Marlboro,
something like that,
or Largo. There's a couple. It's in a little unincorporated patch of suburb between Baltimore and Annapolis, Maryland, or between DC and Annapolis, Maryland, south of Baltimore. And the city, it's funny, the day that we went, the city released a statement saying that the park is for sale and that they're looking for a new buyer.
The city or whatever region, incorporated region, wants to keep the park because, of course, it's good for businesses around. The park is zoned for being a theme park. And when you drive up to it, and the parking lot is actually quite nice, all the parking lots and the entrance, like the bones. I won't put it this way. The bones of this park are very good. So Six Flags decided, okay, we don't want to operate it anymore. I think it could be a Darien Lake situation where now it's Six Darien Lake again, but really it's just Six Flags operating the park on behalf of Darien Lake. Which before that they were just independently being operated.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that they're gonna find some sort of way. The stickers are gonna drop out, and then they're gonna just sell the park off, and then either it's gonna be subsidized, or maybe the city or some other local agency will purchase it, and then they're gonna find an operator for it, and hopefully that way they can keep the park alive. And stickers have to be involved in it, but I feel like the bones are good enough, and there's some pretty decent rides there. Like if they were to just fix it up, and I'm gonna discuss this in a second, they can really turn the park into something pretty decent. And like I would personally like to see maybe Herschend come in, because like if they can fix Kentucky Kingdom, they can fix this place. And there's lots of nature. This park is actually quite green. You wouldn't think so, but the park is quite green. And I think if they were to just repaint and retheme some of the things, and put a little bit of love into themed areas, which the steampunk area and the Mardi Gras area are honestly kind of fine. All I have to do is just clean up the Mardi Gras area just a tiny bit. I think overall this park can be a very lush environment. They can make it the same aesthetic as Silver City if they wanted to. I think there's lots of potential, actually. I just think that the right company needs to come in. Six Flags has so many things in their hands.
Yeah, they've got a lot right now.
You know? Yeah,
and it's not like California is Great America, where the land is already not there.
It's already sold.
They're already running a park that they don't own on land they don't own. This is a object. My understanding is, like, if the park isn't profitable, which maybe it's not, then but it's not so unprofitable that it's outside of the realm of becoming profitable after a few years of the right changes. It's, the park always got a lot of crap for its dysfunctionality, but maybe for a park that is, just a park, it seems dysfunctional. But for a park that's supposed to close permanently in a matter of months, maybe even weeks, it's perfectly fine. It's not like, I guess we went, and I kind of expected to go there and get some rides in and leave the park feeling like, well, that's that, it's time. But I left the park feeling like, oh my God, like this seems like, it just doesn't seem like this. Just like, is this necessary? Like, that's what I keep catching myself saying. And like the Zimmerman era, the Cedar Flags era, every time they do something like demolish King Ka or whatever, I'm just like, is this really necessary? Like, I'm not a backseat driver. We're armchair engineers, and we don't know what we don't know. I always assume that, like, if a decision is being done, that it was thought out. Like, I don't expect things like closing a whole theme park or demolishing a park signature ride to be a decision that's taken lightly. But having said that, some things just seem so dramatic and so bold and final that I'm just like, is this really necessary? And that's, I felt like that way with when Volcano was demolished. I felt that way with like Green Lantern, with some of the other, culling of rides and things. And now like a whole park, a whole park that they own, that is an asset. It's not this complicated thing like Kentucky Kingdom or Great America, where the land isn't theirs and they're, doing stuff with the city. It's theirs. They own the park. They own the land. It's a lot of land. It's in a market that does theme parks really well, that loves theme parks.
So that's why I have a suspicion it's not the end of it. I just have a suspicion it's the end of it for Six Flags. And yes, the park will close as we know it, and maybe it'll be a season or two where it may not even be operated. And there's always hope. I think about Kentucky Kingdom, it stood there for years, and they managed to reopen it. So I think there is potential, and I am hoping that something comes out of it, even if it's in a very different shape. But there is definitely potential, and I want to make that very clear here. So yeah, I guess there was a question that we kind of asked ourselves, like, who could buy it? I mean, I kind of already answered. I think Pershing would be a perfect operator for it.
Ivy Parks,
Who is Ivy Parks?
Staples, Indiana Beach,
okay.
Clementon Park in New Jersey, and Fantasy Island, Niagara Falls, Niagara. It doesn't seem like they don't shy away from challenges. I know they've got a lot on their plate right now.
That'd be a very big part for them, though.
But if the price is right, I could see who knows. It just seems like it's good enough that if somebody does the negotiation right, it could be a great opportunity for somebody somewhere. It just doesn't seem like that. It's not like this huge. I mean, some of these parks, like turning around Jogga Lake after Cedar Fairs, the Six Flags and Cedar Fair years was one thing. Trying to turn around Kentucky Kingdom was like a huge uphill battle. This park does
also, both of those parks are like in regions where like it makes no sense to have parks that big. This park is in a giant metro, and like in between other giant metros, I feel like it kind of just, I don't know. I was kind of thinking, Merlin wants their foot in the parks.
I feel like unlike Jogga Lake, which like they built themselves up really big as a Six Flags park to compete with Cedar Point and like Kennywood and Kings Island and stuff. And then when they tried to shrink the park back down into like a family park to differentiate it from those competitors, once they stopped being competitors, it was like hard to attract people. I feel like Six Flags America could do, because like Kentucky Kingdom has successfully turned itself into a smaller, more family-oriented park that, they don't have the B&M anymore. They don't have the inverted coaster anymore, but it doesn't matter. Like, it still works. And I think Six Flags could do that. I feel like Six Flags America could chop some of the bigger rides and just hold on to the stuff that's been spruced up the most, maintained the most, has the newer fixtures and stuff, and it would still work. People would still go because it's there. Like, it wouldn't be much to ask for the people in the region to just continue going, because their alternatives are not necessarily that close.
Yeah.
Because like just doing this road trip, we realized, like, in my mind, Six Flags America is closing because it is surrounded by other parks in the same marketplace that are like need more of their own market share to stay afloat, and Six Flags America being eliminated fixes that. But really, if you're in DC or Annapolis or Baltimore, especially if you're, east of DC or in general Annapolis area, if you're west of Annapolis or if you're south of Baltimore, I mean, the park is right there in between these three cities. And anybody that goes to this park that's like 30, 40 minutes away from this park, their next nearest park that is ostensibly in the same marketplace is an hour, 2 hours away.
Yeah.
It's not actually, King's Dominion is not actually that convenient of an alternative for somebody who lives in Annapolis. Dorney Park.
2 hours to them then?
Cedar Point, or Hershey Park, Busch Gardens, Williamsburg. These parks are close enough that you can do them on a road trip. If you're a coaster enthusiast, it's like, oh yeah, sure. What the hell?
For a day trip,
but DC, Annapolis, and Baltimore, no, like these aren't easy parks to just toddle over to and get your park fix for the day and then go home. Six Flags America is always going to serve that market in a unique way. And when it's gone, it's gone. It's gone.
I just think maybe for Six Flags, it makes no sense now to operate both of these parks in the closed region, which for them is a closed region, which is maybe why they decided to consolidate and just focus on King's Dominion instead. But I'm sure there's room for Circus America in whichever future shape or
yeah.
Let me just put it that.
I'll take it in whatever shape they package it in. Anything is better than no park.
So I think in a few weeks, so stay tuned, guys. We're gonna do an episode on both that in California and Great America. We're visiting Great America next week. Kind of like an early birthday for Alex. Every year we appear to go to Great America for one of her birthdays.
Yeah,
how that works out. But
I have been going to Great America for my birthday off and on since I was 6.
And God, ever since we moved to the U.S., we've been going off and on for my birthday. Yeah. So last year went for my birthday. This year it's your birthday.
2018 we went for your birthday.
2017 was birthday. 2017 was your birthday.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So anyway, so we keep going. So we're gonna go to Great America next week. We're also gonna go to Worlds of Fun next week. We just did Hershey Park. We did Kingston Dominion, and we did Williamsburg. So there's actually quite a few U.S. projects coming up. So we're going to talk a little bit about all the new rides there. So stay tuned for episodes about that. And we are currently on season 6 of Coast to Kings Radio.
We still have some UK park episodes.
We're going to do Blackpool soon. We're going to do Chessington,
Skegness Parks, Great Yarmouth Parks.
So as of right now, where we launched the season, we launched an episode about Epic Universe, Fans of Wild Ningbo in Shanghai, which has a park that's themed to like Chinese warfare.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty insane, like one of the scariest dark rides I've ever been on. The other episode about Europa Park, in Europe, celebrating 50 years. We actually started ranking every single Universal park in the world.
Oh yeah,
because we've been to all the parks in the world
now. 7.
So we did an all Universal Parks worldwide ranked episode. Of course, we did a Great British Road Trip Alton Towers episode. We also did one about Polden's Park and Trade Manor, as well as Store Park. So definitely, and Flamingo Land, I shouldn't forget. So check out those episodes. Then we also talked about some more Chinese parks.
Kunming,
we armchair imagineered. So we kind of designed. We can figure out what.
Oh yeah.
And what are the solutions for SeaWorld Orlando? And then our most recent episode last week, we talked about the original tilt coaster, the Aqua Tracks, a couple of other things in Korea and Taiwan. So that is definitely something to check out. And then, of course, this week's this episode. And we got stuff from all season. We have so much. I was telling Alex, I didn't even know how to make our schedule for the podcast. Because it's like, bam, every time we're preparing for one episode, there's like 3 more ideas popping in. And then we're visiting all these parks. So who knows? So we're actually launching next week. But we're going to launch an episode every Wednesday. And we thank you guys for listening. And we'll catch you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye.